This is Ralph Michaels, and I am not doing a big game breakdown. I am doing the big game breakdown. Ohio State and Michigan playing for the Big Ten Championship and looking at who they're going to face in the Big Ten Championship, a playoff spot in the Final Four. So we're looking at two of the most dominant teams this year in college football. In most stats, when you look at yards per game diff, points per game diff, and yards per play diff, these teams are either 1, 2, 3, or 4. Oregon, the other team that's been in the mix. But when I look at current performance, it leads me to the Ohio State University. How about this stat? Ohio State Buckeyes are 15-1 against the spread as a dog of 3 or more. They're not a dog very often. Obviously, that goes back a long time. But when you get a team like Ohio State that's used to winning, that is an underdog, that feels disrespected, it's the kind of team I want to play on. I look at Michigan. They've played a weaker schedule than Ohio State. When I look at conference play, it tells me a lot. The Buckeyes are plus 2.43 yards per play in conference action. That's number 2 in the country behind Oregon. Michigan is 1.86, far behind. And why you might say 0.57 yards per play isn't huge, 1.86 to 2.43. Folks, those are yards per play. So if you have a half-yard difference on every play of the game, that's significant. That's over 35 or 40 yards difference when we're looking at an entire game with 65 to 70 plays getting played. Body of work, again, both undefeated. We know what they've done. But look at Michigan down the road. 2 weeks ago at Penn State, yes, a very tough place to play on the road. They only had 287 yards of offense and 15 first downs. They go to Maryland as a huge favorite. They only win by 7, 291 yards and 20 first downs. And while they say, Sharon Moore is the acting head coach, Arbor will not be on the sidelines for this game. He said McCarthy's feeling great, but you look at J.J. McCarthy over the last few games, and he's had a noticeable limp, and him taking off has just not occurred. Now, granted, if anything, if he has any inkling in this game, that injury is not going to matter, but it has been a concern. When I look at Ohio State, you have to remember this. They have the best group of skill players in the country, bar none. Marvin Harrison and Ibuke at wide receiver. You also have Fleming. You have a tight end in Cade Stover. You have Travion Henderson. And while Kyle McCord, everyone said, he's the game manager, he's learning how to play. Did you know Ohio State is the number 1 passing offense in the Big Ten? So while we don't give Kyle McCord much credit, he has produced. Henderson has missed several games this year. Ibuka's missed several games. Harrison was banged up for a few times. Those players are all now as healthy as they've been in this entire time. I am using Ohio State in this game. And while I'm not using the total, we talk about two of the best defenses in the country. I just want to point out to you, I tweeted this earlier, Ohio State and Michigan in the last 9 games, either 8-0-1 over-under or 9-0 over-under, with games averaging over 70 points per game. You think Ohio State, Michigan, you think defense? It hasn't been the case. I think it will be lower scoring than that this week. But the OHIO, Ohio State Buckeyes, in the game this week. Happy Thanksgiving. Appreciate you tuning in.
What is up, guys? Talking a little Texas Tech versus Texas. Friday night lights action here. So a good one on Black Friday. And guys, I actually think the underdog's getting a few too many points here. A full 2 touchdowns with Texas Tech. A lot of people liking Texas out there. They got the Big 12 championship in their horizon. A possible playoff entrance here. Who knows what the ceiling is for Texas. But in this game, that's what matters here, guys. Up against Texas Tech, who, if you've been watching the Red Raiders, they've been playing good football of late. If you go the last 3 games, since they lost against BYU in a head-scratching loss, they've played 3 pretty good teams. TCU, Kansas, and UCF won all 3 games and look good doing so. And their running back, Taj Brooks, he is a guy that's going to be running the football, running the rock on Sundays in the NFL. If you watch him play, he runs over linebackers. He's really quick. He's a guy they give the football to a lot. And what I'm getting at is that's going to shorten the game. There's not going to be as many possessions. I think they're going to be able to grind out first downs. I don't necessarily think they're going to be able to win outright, although I don't hate the money line, big plus price there. Plus the 14s, the way I would go here, guys. If you're looking for some Friday night lights action, I mean, just look at the amount of rushing yards he's been putting up. He's averaging over 130 yards per game in college football, over 100 yards in each of the last 4 games, and that's only kind of split up by 98 yards against Kansas State. You go back before that, he's on like 10 straight over 100-yard rushing games. I think he gets another one here. A bunch of rushes going to him. Brooks carries the rock all game long here. And I think this one finishes, something like 27-20, something of that nature. Texas likely wins. However, I doubt they cover here, guys. Good one in the Lone Star State. And I think the Red Raiders stay within the number.
Hey, let's look at a big game breakdown for Friday night college football. This is the last game on the board, Friday night at 8:30 Eastern on Fox National TV. It's also a game you're going to find later this week in my college football top 25 video preview here on Wager Talk TV. So make sure you hit the bell when you subscribe for an instant alert when that college football top 25 video is posted. And that's because we have number 6 Oregon hosting now number 16 Oregon State. That's because the Beavers fell 5 spots in the playoff rankings after that home loss as a couple-point favorite against Washington last week. And you do have to wonder, will that loss linger this week? I thought that was a very winnable game for Oregon State. I thought they're going to finally give and somewhat of a phony Washington team their first loss of the season, but it didn't happen. And that means these Oregon Ducks were huge Oregon State fans last week. Not so much. And boy, would they have loved to seen Washington lose, because keep in mind, there's 5 undefeated teams in the top 5 right now. The first one-loss team right on the outside looking in is number 6 Oregon, and they are legitimate. I do think they're one of the best 4 teams in college football. I hope they can find their way into the playoffs. And by the way, if they win this game, they do clinch second place in the Pac-12, which means they will play Washington a rematch in the Pac-12 title game next Friday night in Las Vegas. So this is a very important game for Oregon for numerous reasons. And I do think they're the preferred side here in this big game on Friday night. I do a database simulation, 10,000 games, and on average, my database has Oregon winning this game by over 18 points. Currently, as we check the Wager Talk live odds screen, middle of the week here, mostly 13 and a halves out there. A couple 14 starting to pop. So I do like Oregon at 14 or less, especially at that key number of 13 and a half or less. And let's look at the defensive side of the ball. Both teams have been good on defense, but Oregon has been really strong on defense this year, allowing just 16 and a half points a game. Both teams have been good on offense, but Oregon's about a yard per play better offensively, both running and throwing the ball. That'll be the difference in this game, and that'll enable them to extend the lead and actually get possibly the front door cover here. We always talk about backdoor covers, but I think Oregon actually could pull away late, especially if Oregon State is a bit fatigued from that battle against Washington last week. Oregon's Ducks, the most underrated team in college football, despite being 6th in the poll. I think they're a top 4 team. Either Michigan or Ohio State's going to have a loss after this week. If Oregon wins out and beats Washington next week, I think they do find their way into the college football playoffs. And keep in mind, speaking of that Washington loss earlier this year, 3-point loss as a 3-point road dog. They outgained Washington by over 100 yards in the game, had over 540 offensive yards on the road. Last week at home, Oregon State only managed about 370 total yards of offense. So this is the better team at home in a focus spot. Oregon Ducks, lay it if you're going to play it on Friday night.
Hey guys, Drew Martin here, wagertalk.com with the best bet for the Wednesday college football today videos. And I am going on the Miami of Ohio Redhawks here, guys. Under the touchdown, -6 in the hook. Look, a lot of people like in Ball State. They've played better football of late. But the thing is, they're still averaging just 17, 18 points a game. Their offense isn't all there yet. And they're having to go up against Miami of Ohio, likely against Toledo for the MAC championship next week. And this Miami of Ohio team, I mean, against the spread, they're 9-2 on the season. They've been cashing tickets. We're not jumping off of this money train this weekend, having to lay the 6.5 with the Chuck Martin Redhawks. That's the side we are on here, guys. And really, because talked about, Ball State struggling offensively, or somewhat struggling, not being that explosive of an offense, being able to throw the ball downfield. And Miami O, their defense letting up just 10 points per game. I think they really quiet this Ball State team. They're not going to have to score all that much. I think they actually win this something like, I don't know, 24-10, something of that nature. So, hey, it's not a midweek action game, but on the Saturday slate here with a lot of big time games, this one riding under the radar. And I'm laying it under a touchdown here, -6.5 with Miami O. That's my best bet. Drew Martin, wagertalk.com.
Let's look at a free college football play for this Saturday. A huge card on both Friday and Saturday, the final week of the regular season here. And I think there's a little bit of an under the radar game I'm going to give you here, a steamroller blowout, if you will, free for you in just a moment. A game we haven't talked about much on the TV shows this week, but it's got some value nonetheless. Quick reminder, though, this is the week to get on board. Not only do we have college and pro football almost every day of the week, Thanksgiving's always a loaded time with all sports, but also college and pro basketball, of course, on a daily basis. And this week only, you get an instant 30% discount on a 7-day all sports all access at wagertalk.com. Normally it's $99, instant 30% discount, get it down to $69. That works out to less than $10 a day for every college and pro football, every college and pro basketball best bet I release for the next 7 days and nights. No promo code needed. Check it out on my page, Steve Merrill, wagertalk.com. All right, let's look at a little bit of an under the radar game for you on Saturday. It's an early afternoon game at noon Eastern kickoff. Game number 212 on the rotation, SMU minus the 18 against Navy. And I know Navy for decades now have been a winning play as an underdog, especially a road dog. It's been a moneymaker for several decades. I started 25 plus years ago. Back in the 90s, we used to talk about it. And it makes sense because Navy, disciplined service academy, and they run the ball basically every place. They keep games close. But this is one of those times I think we're looking to fade the underdog for a couple reasons. First of all, when Navy gets behind, which they will in this game, they're going to have a difficult time throwing the ball. They have absolutely no passing attack. They average just 8 completions a game, only 100 passing yards. They have to run the ball, and they might not have as much success as they normally do against a very strong SMU run defense. Last year, SMU struggled against Navy, and they struggled stopping most teams running the ball. Vastly improved rush defense. After 11 games this year, SMU giving up just over 112 yards per game on the ground, just 3.2 yards per carry. They've been even better at home, just 2.9 yards per rush. So they match up well here. And SMU throws the ball extremely well this year, nearly 9 yards per pass attempt. Navy, as is often the case, is not good defending the pass. They just don't have the athletes at the service academies in the defensive backfield. And they also aren't used to facing the pass in practice and at other times during the year. And that's been the case once again this year. So SMU should be able to extend the lead, get the front door cover here, because Navy has no backdoor cover potential, no passing attack, whereas SMU can throw the ball and extend the lead as the game goes. 10,000 game database simulation on average has SMU winning this game by 25 points. So we get some nice line value of nearly a touchdown as well. Take a look at SMU minus the 18 on Saturday afternoon at noon Eastern. And that's actually, I believe, on ESPN2 national TV, a little under the radar national TV game for you on Saturday. And don't forget my strongest best bets for college and pro football this weekend, daily college and pro basketball on my page, along with daily free plays, Steve Merrill, wagertalk.com. And don't forget about that 7-day all sports, all access special for just under $10 a day this week only. And don't forget also, check out my college football top 25 video and my NFL Fade the Public videos this week here on Wager Talk TV. Hit the bell for instant alerts when those go live. Have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy the games this weekend. And we'll talk to you again soon here on Wager Talk TV.
Welcome to my best bet. This, of course, Ralph Michaels. I'm breaking down a Big Ten game. And to me, it's just a little bit of a sneaky game because you look at Purdue's offense and the way they've struggled, you don't think much of them. You look at Indiana's offense, yes, they scored 45 at Illinois, but that was because of turnovers and special teams. They did have 29 first downs, so they moved the ball. But I am going over in this game. And rule number 1 in college football, it should be every time you look at a total, you're looking at the weather. Anytime you're looking at a game, you should look at the weather. This weather, perfect. High 40s, low 50s, sunny, winds under 10 miles an hour. So the weather factor is out of consideration. When I look at Purdue, I see a clear uptick in their offense. Ohio State, they gained 257 yards. That's Ohio State. They go to Nebraska, again, a poor performance, 195 yards. They go to Michigan, again, that's Michigan, 269 yards. So those numbers are low, but you look at what Ohio State and Michigan did against their other opponents. They were actually number 6 against Ohio State, and they were number 2 against Michigan. So those are powerful performances. Then that offense that played incredible defense put up 49 points and 604 yards against Minnesota. Now, last week, they had a late scratch at quarterback. Nobody knew. It wasn't in the injury reports, but Hudson Carr, who has over 2,100 yards on the season and 12 touchdowns, all of a sudden was the late scratch. Even with their backup quarterback, they put up 443 yards, but only 15 points as they were -3 turnovers. Hudson Card expected to be back. So I have a Purdue offense, played the number 1 defense, the number 2 defense exploded, didn't have their quarterback, still played well. I expect them to really come out here and put up a lot of points. For Indiana, same thing. They bounced back and forth. They had a big performance early in the year against Indiana State. We're not going to count that. They went through a stretch then when they did not top 320 yards. The turning point, they got to Penn State, 24 points and 349 yards, a nice performance. Against Wisconsin, they are slowed to 20 points in a win, but only 261 yards. But then the last 2 weeks, they got to Illinois, 451 yards and 45 points, and then 402 yards against Michigan State. They are going to be able to pass the ball against a Purdue defense that has played well statistically against the pass, but has not played a lot of good quarterbacks. This is an over for me. Current number at 53.5. Purdue, Indiana, over the total. And guys, take advantage of the Thanksgiving $69 special. Yes, this is a college football video, but I want to tell you about my start in college hoops. 8-1, 89% my last 9 plays. And on the season this year in college basketball, 68%. I love college basketball at the start of the year. Appreciate you tuning in. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your families.